So once again, don't have deck lists, but we are going to get into Winding God versus ChristmasTime. This is top 4, Winding God on Mono Demacia, ChristmasTime on Freljord PZ. I believe this is an Ezreal deck, and I think it's Ezreal Vi. So something that I've been talking about for a while is there are two Ionia PZ decks you can play. There's oh my god, why is this so thin now? So there's Karma Ezreal and there's Viheimer. And I figure that at some point people are going to decide that Karma's too late game and Heimer's also a little too late game and split the difference and just go Vi Ezreal. It seems like a pretty natural progression of the deck, and especially because they're in the same, because they're both PZ champions, you can pair this with any other region and get yourself out of Ionia. And there are some cool tools that you can get out of other regions by playing Ezreal. I know that Bilgewater Ezreal was something that we saw a lot early on. It was mostly Twisted Fate, and that deck can just like tick up your Ezreal extremely quickly. I do think we're going to see Vi Ezreal as a Bilgewater deck come out again sometime in the future. Not necessarily anytime soon, but I do think that if people re-explore this archetype, that they will decide that Vi is better than Twisted Fate, and like you just have to put like Progress Stage or something in the deck. Excuse me. But yeah, so far here we have the Vi Ezreal. Frostbite Ezreal is a deck that we actually saw quite a bit this weekend. It seemed to kind of come out of the blue to me, but maybe I just wasn't paying close enough attention. And then Winding God playing a pretty standard lineup as always. Winding God not necessarily one not to like break the meta, but plays a pretty standard composition every time, just plays them much better than his opponents and gets consistent results out of it. We've seen him kind of innovate decks before. Here we see like Brightsteel formation coming out of the Mono Demacia. He was I believe he was the breakout player of the Indoor Spiders that really just didn't run a lot of spells. I'm not sure what to call that version, because we have seen like Fearsome Indoor Spiders in the past, but his is like hardcore on the Fearsome plan. But he was, at least it was the first time I had seen the deck, was when Winding God won a Duels of Runeterra with it. And yeah, it's possible that like Ice Veil Archer is just a phenomenal answer to the meta that I just didn't expect. I like the Thermo Beam attempt here. A little unfortunate that it works out as this poorly. I feel like this is about as punished as you could possibly get for something like this. And yeah, I like the attack from the Badger Bear as well. I think that not killing Avarosan sentries is something that people focus extremely heavily on in Legends of Runeterra. Is like they just see this thing and they're like, okay, I can never kill this. And there are times that you can leave this unit on board for the entire game and it'll work out. This isn't one of those times. I'm actually a little surprised to see the block not come out there just to accelerate the plan. Okay, that makes a little more sense. So we're going to have Vi challenge onto this. And actually, there's a decent chance that we either see a pass from... I think either this comes down or we see a pass. And if we see a pass, I'd actually really like to see the turn end from ChristmasTime. Your opponent's already got 1 spell mana. So you guys will be pretty much on even terms next game or next turn. Like you're not, and you play infinitely more spells than your opponent does, right? This is great for you. For them, it's like kind of whatever. Like there are spells in the deck, but it's not like phenomenal. They'd much rather be developing units. So I think I would either want to see the... I just explained it, right? I either want to see the Loyal Grizzly out of Winding God or a pass out of ChristmasTime. Cytheria trades onto the Vi, so that's kind of okay. It's a little unfortunate that you're never going to get value out of this, but I think like playing the Loyal Badger Bear here and then playing the Cytheria post-comp, like on your turn 7, would have been a little bit better. This is the one thing that stops Vi for 2 for winning, though. So it kind of is what it is in that regard. And I do think you have to take the Vi here. Or take the Cytheria, I meant. Just because the Fearsome turning on is going to make it so that this Avaros and Sentry is a little bit harder to block even. Now Vi is only set up to have a good block onto the Brightsteel Protector, and it feels really greedy of ChristmasTime to go for this 3-for-1 on the Vi, but because Bannerman is a deck that kind of has a good Ezreal matchup now more than ever, thanks to things like the Loyal Badger Bear, just how healthy some of the units are, even Grizzled Ranger is just something that's difficult for Ezreal to actually chew through. Which I think is the reason that we've seen a hard fall off in Ezreal decks recently. It just has it doesn't feel good into Demacia. And it looks like, yeah, actually with this, with this War Chef pickup, there's actually no great trades for the Vi. I can go on to the War Chef, but that's too much damage coming at your face. That's going to be 15 damage you'd be taking, which is lethal. Because this can only block this. So, yeah, I think that ChristmasTime is actually going to continue to go for this greedy play. Probably has a Harsh Winds than I would expect. Just a Brittle Steel onto the Grizzled Ranger. That's another thing about like the Frostbite decks is Brittle Steel is very good against Grizzled Ranger. It's like Brittle Steel and Stunning it and Purifying it are like just 3 of the things that hit this. It's not great to find in most scenarios, but it is what it is. And yeah, ChristmasTime's playing very loose with their life total, which is understandable. You know, Winding God's Hand is pretty much like all on the board, and getting a 3-for-1 out of your Vi is something that you can't normally expect to do. Personally, I would have killed the Cythria, not played this fast and loose game with my life total, but that's why ChristmasTime is in the top 4 of a tournament, and I'm a caster. The War Chef definitely made things a little bit awkward there. You would have liked to see the Brightsteel Protector getting value. Oh, Ice Veil Arch coming out. It's actually huge. We're going to see this Vi 4-for-1 and Evolve. Actually, it's likely that a single combat comes out onto it. I don't remember if that's going to level up Vi. I don't think single combat... I don't remember if Vi levels up if she dies. I think she does. I think she's one of the weird ones that does, but... I actually feel like we... Okay, so no single combat. Yeah, there is still 9 mana on the side of ChristmasTime, so the lack of single combat makes a bit of sense. We've actually gotten a lot more value out of this Vi than I ever kind of expected to, but you're not out of the woods yet. You are only at 5 health. Your opponent has this very wide board. We're going to see a Brightsteel Protector coming down next turn, which means it's going to be only Frostbite effects that can save you. This wouldn't be an unreasonable single combat. I think it's probably the best that you're going to get out of it. It doesn't activate the Vi either because she only gets her effect off when she's attacking. But if your opponent has to use another removal spell onto this, then you're fine with that. Because it negates one of the targets from the Static Shock. But there's nothing like Will of Ionia or Deny coming out of this deck as we generally see out of Ezreal decks. It is Freljord, so if there's a Brittle Steel, I imagine it would have been played there to preserve the Vi, but yeah, I think that as much advantage as that Vi got us, I don't think it's going to be enough, especially because Brightsteel formation just slams down here. Now any removal is ineffective. It's going to have to be only Frostbite effects, and a Harsh Winds could... not save you actually if we do see this onto this. 2 attacks are lethal, so we'd have to see like a unit into a Harsh Winds, and even then, like, you know, you're not actually pressuring the board at all because everything has barrier. So I would assume Winding God's gonna pick this one up here. Your best case is like, oh, Avaros and Marksman. Okay, I was gonna say Avaros and Sentry, or yeah, Avaros and Marksman works as well, but you do need to have Harsh Winds here. And even then, yeah, actually, I lied. I forgot that Bright still does it on attack as well, so the Marksman is actually pretty relevant. Sentry would have been the best case, so this does mean that there is a... Huh. Is it just Brittle Steel? Flash Freeze, okay. Flash Freeze it fell out of favor with Ezreal decks a lot later on in the format. I guess now we are back in a point where you value the Frostbite effects, but... it's definitely like something I didn't consider because 1, as mentioned before, I don't have these players' deck lists, but 2, like it was just something that was cut so early from the Ezreal Frostbite decks of the past that I honestly like forgot that they could run it. I generally forget Flash Freeze is a card. So we see the Ezreal finally come down, but like, there's really not a lot of cards for Christmas time. It's very reasonable, but this Ezreal is not enough to get it done. We don't, because you're not Ionia, you don't have that karma, oh shit, I win button of like, you know, oh, all of my mystic shots are doubled. All of a sudden my Ezreal attack deals 10 damage. I do think she deals her damage. Yeah, okay. So she deals her damage when she dies, but she doesn't level up when she dies. That's the difference. And while Vi's going to be a big hit here, I'm not sure it's enough. So we're going to see Winding God potentially falling down as low as 7 here with this Mystic Shot. Although ChristmasTime is running a lot of units. I know a couple of these cards have been held on to for a while. There's a lot that they could be. There's a lot of things that just aren't that effective here. Unless we see another damage-based spell or just a spell off the top. Okay, that'll do it. Get excited. So we see the Ezreal, like, very narrowly come back. It was a good play by ChristmasTime to, like, play the Vi for advantage as much as he did. I think that, like, he played that one extremely well. A lot better than I would have. And just, I think he got, like, a 4-for-1 off on his first Vi. So pretty standard sea monsters. Sea monsters are generally supposed to be favored against Bannerman, I believe, the Devour Sea Monster. There's not a lot of great answers coming out of Demacia for that. It's really just like single combat, and with single combat being one of the best spells in the deck, you kind of have to get value out of it elsewhere. And if the Devour Sea Monsters are 7/7s, you're really just throwing one unit away to save another, which never feels great. But we do see Winding God at least with like a decent curve, the 2 into 3 into 4. There's not Fleet Feather Tracker is generally the only one drop that gets played in these decks these days, so it can be a little bit difficult to expect yourself to be able to curve 1, 2, 3, 4. But yeah, I think like Dreg Dredgers, Thorny Toad, Dreadbloom Wanderer, there's enough early units in the deck to kind of stall out and hit your deep. And once you go deep, it's extremely difficult for Demacia to come back, because it is just this kind of like stat checking deck where they gain incremental advantages through having better stats than you through things like Cythria, as well as just like Loyal Badger Bear just being 2 fucking units. It's a goddamn 9/5 for 1. Or a 9/5 for 4. Purify is actually kind of nice. It's a really good surprise factor for taking the deep away from things and making them a lot smaller, but we do see ChristmasTime pretty good open here. Ruination going to be milled away, which is a little unfortunate. Love to see that in the Demacia matchup, but yeah, these Thorny Toads line up a little awkward for the Badger Bears. I think it's still fine to throw it down. You do need to just chew through this board of your opponent as much as possible. Your open attack is okay, but not great. Like, your War Chef is going to get traded on by the Dreg Dredgers. I think throwing down the Riposte to save a War Chef is a little awkward and risky. You know, anything like a Vile Feast or a Withering Wail does just, you know, kind of cancel that out and make you feel real goofy. And all of that for a War Chef seems pretty unvaluable. This could be a game where we see the Fiora take over, though. Fiora definitely feels like a card that's pretty impactful versus Sea Monsters because they have so many like small guys that they want to get out. For example, Winding God's currently lined up for at least 3 kills on this Fiora if the Riposte does manage to make it onto this. And because he has the single combat to go along with it, it's even more likely. So we could just see like an attack onto the Thorny Toad on the following turn, Riposte attack onto this, and then if something comes out to pop the barrier, you just single combat in response, and then that pops the barrier, and then whatever's going on the Fiora goes onto it. Probably a 1 damage spell. And she's just going to stay pretty healthy for the duration in this game. She's going to go back down to a 3/3 here. If she challenges here, if she becomes a 4/3. Like, it's just not impossible for this Fiora to actually get the win here. At least ChristmasTime has to be a little bit concerned about throwing down saplings and Dreg Dredgers and things like that willy-nilly for the remainder of the game. I still think I would have liked to have seen the Loyal Badger Bear come down pre-combat. Like, instead of going for an open attack, I think just playing this. It trades onto a Thorny Toad. It attacks again. You challenge out the other Thorny Toad. But then you've got a 4-4 coming in. And if your opponent's play was Dreadbloom Wanderer, that doesn't trade effectively onto the Badger Bear. It's actually like borderline comedic how badly this is actually working out for Christmas. I like 3 Loyal Badger Bear. It's pretty undisputed at this point that Badger Bear is just like one of the best cards in the game, right? We actually feel like we see Demacia branching out into other archetypes other than Bannerman solely off the back of Loyal Badger Bear. Or Grizzled Ranger, that's his name. Like we see Lux Karma coming out, and they're running Badger Bears and Grizzled Rangers just because they're so effective at stat checking the early to mid game. We've seen the standalone Fiora deck running it. There's a lot. And yeah, I think I like Cythria more than I like Grizzled Ranger, so I do like just throwing out the open attacks with these. ChristmasTime showing an unwillingness to trade the Dreadbloom Wanderers for them. And assuming there's only 1 Ruination in ChristmasTime's deck, you do know that that was tossed away. There is generally only 1 Ruination, if any. A lot of the Sea Monster players have cut it as it gets clunky in more than a couple matchups. Cythria could come down. That could get responded by a Devour Sea Monster, though I'm not sure why you would Devour Sea Monster, or you wouldn't Devour Sea Monster before the attacks here from ChristmasTime, so it's possible that that's a consideration. You can actually just check off your list. Devour the Depths would almost certainly have come down onto the Grizzled Ranger already. Of course, it could be a bait, but I do think I like playing something before going into attacks here. Your attacks are currently okay, not great. Yeah, I do like the Cythria. This gives you a better chance at winning the game with Fiora, as previously mentioned. You will buffer up to a 4-4. Kind of depends on if there's a second Ruination in ChristmasTime's deck. That is something Winding God would know that I would not. Yeah, Vengeance, okay. We can even single combat and not feel like terrible about it. We do have 2. We're kind of running out of units, and that's something that we've seen Bannerman players struggle with before, is like they hold on to their spells for so long, waiting for that perfect opportunity, that they actually run out of board before the perfect opportunity comes. So I do like the single combat here to help push damage. There's not a lot that ChristmasTime is going to be able to do for 2 mana, outside of like maybe a Vile Feast onto a Grizzled Ranger, but we probably would have seen that on the attacks already. Yeah, just sacrifice the Fiora. At this point, you're not going to be able to win the game with it. You might as well push through the damage, as well as being able to pull this thing to the left to maximize your damage output this turn. It feels really good. But we could see Winding God in a rough spot if there are Devourer of the Depths coming out of ChristmasTime, but I don't think that's the case since we would have seen one last turn. Thresh is okay. It's going to help you. It's not even really going to help you like clean up the board. It's going to help you just like clean up the attack phase, if that makes sense, because like this is still going to turn into a Loyal Badger Bear, but it does deny the Scout attack next turn, which is not nothing. It's not, excuse me, it's not much, but it's not nothing. Vile Feast, all right. Going to get us started off pretty well. Yeah, gonna deny the spider and the yeah, there's not a lot of value that you can get out of single combat at this point. There's nothing really in the deck that you can kill with 4 attack. So just using it to dodge removal and push damage onto this Thresh seems pretty good. If Thresh wants to, yeah, like if Thresh challenges the Loyal Badger Bear now, then you just win the game because you open attack for 12. Any Grasp of the Undyings get challenged out by a riposte, and then, you know, you're just not gaining any life, pushing through all this damage. Yeah, I like the Scout attack as well. This is going to really open you up. There's nothing, as I mentioned, there's no second Ruination. There's nothing super intimidating that ChristmasTime can do as a response to this. And like the Thresh blocking here doesn't feel impactful. Thresh blocking at any point doesn't really feel impactful. It's possible that like you eat this, then you block one of the Badger Bears and throw out a Withering Wail, but throwing out like the Withering Wail now even just wouldn't feel that great. Either way, you're taking 4 damage. Like there's so many, you get in your own head a lot when thinking about how to play around Grizzled Ranger. You know, does the scout attack matter? Does killing it later on matter? There's a 4/4. Is it not a 4/4? I think we're going to see the riposte come out as the answer, actually. I like the riposte, just trying to push through the damage. Your opponent, this will knock your opponent down to 8. And with only 5 mana left for your opponent, that's pretty much going to be like, they could play a guy for 5 mana. There's not a lot in the deck for 5 mana. Everything's pretty much going to cost more. So yeah, you just attack again. There's only one block your opponent has. You might not win through Grasp of the Undying. I don't think there's a way around it, though. Like, you could detain this Thresh just to clear out a blocker so that if your opponent does have a spell, you know, you're in a better position. But the problem is because everything you have dies to a spell. Okay, yeah, you don't actually have a good detain lined up because it would immediately pop the Thresh back out. And then you're just in a worse spot. Yeah, so the Frostbite control is a misread that I had on the format. And apparently, like, players are just really valuing Iceveil Archer again and Frostbite effects and things of that nature. I mean, Brittle Steel plays well into Grizzled Ranger. I didn't really think Frostbite was playing that well into the format, but apparently I was wrong. There's really nothing nothing I can say in my own defense, right? Like, there are so many Frostbite decks in top 8 that, like, I just had to have been wrong, right? I think that was like an adaptation of the format where, as I previously mentioned, like, Endure Spiders was the only really like the only Freljord deck that was seeing play. We saw a couple of Frostbite decks see play, but really not a lot. And I guess just, you know, when playing that one Frostbite deck, he was like, oh, you know, I had so much success. Like, I can't believe everybody's sleeping on this. And I thought everybody was sleeping on TF Swain, but apparently it was Frostbite control. But we're also still so early on in the meta that we're still seeing things come out and adapt and whatnot, right? Like, the meta is going to continue to change pretty aggressively for a little while. Next week, a week and a day from today, 8 days from today, we will see our first balance patch thanks after Rising Tides. I think everybody's expecting some similar balance changes to come out of that one. Nothing too surprising, but we'll have to see. The tournament data is kind of all over the place. I don't even know if they're looking at tournament data since they are so small. They might look at Twitch rivals, but yeah, we'll have to see. Yeah, that attack is a little bit better, as you do expect your opponent to block the Trapper. Brittle Steel. Yeah, there's really not a lot to Brittle Steel in the Sea Monster matchup. This is really it. It's like this and Maokai Saplings. Abyssal Eye, maybe. Yeah, this is all pretty normal so far. It's so weird to do like VOD reviews and then like nothing happens for 5 turns, or like nothing that I can really speak to happens for 5 turns. Like if I'm casting, it's a little bit different, but I'm trying to like separate casting from VOD reviews. Defending the Maokai seems normal. It's a little unfortunate that you don't get down an Assessor before that, but I think you're going Hearthguard this turn no matter what anyway. Winding God's actually set up for a pretty good Reckoning in a couple of turns, but first we gotta get these Assessors off. Being tapped out of spell mana on your opponent's side feels pretty good. You're just gonna be able to Yeti into Assessor pretty freely next turn. And ChristmasTime is pretty likely to play a unit first. Yeah, to get the Maokai value. It's weird, like, once Maokai's out, you rarely see open attacks, and that is, like, one of the disadvantages holding the cards sit on field, but, like, it's so valuable to actually get the saplings and get the toss-off that, like, I don't think anybody's ever mad about it. Yeah, I think we actually just see Reckoning here. I thought it was going to be Yeti into Assessor, but honestly, like, this Reckoning is just so valuable. And I don't think it obliterates, I think it kills everything. It might obliterate. We'll see if Winding God gets the draw, we'll know. Okay, he does get the draw. And, like, you still get to develop the Yeti, which sets you up for a 10 damage open attack, a 5 damage open attack into Assessor. But yeah, that's, I mean, like, it's actually kind of insane how much value the Reckoning got there, and I don't think, like, I'm not going to fault ChristmasTime for not playing around. Like, how do you even play around that? Oh, I'll save my Dreadbloom Wanderers for later in the game? What are you talking about? We've seen Winding God actually show a pretty, like, a decent willingness to not open attack versus the Sea Monster deck and continue to develop board instead. I think that's a trend he's going to stick with here. I would like to see at least one of these Assessors come out over the Sejuani. Sejuani does push a lot of damage, though. Trying to think about, like, what your opponent could have. I didn't see how far we are from deep. Really, the only thing you have to play around is, like, Devour Sea Monster, Devour of the Depths, and Jettison. Outside of that, anything that you're getting down isn't super impactful. I really don't hate the Sejuani play since we are still 1 mana off of Ruination. You know, you could set yourself up for a Trifarian Assessor 3-draw next turn, even if we do get Ruination. So I actually like the Sejuani a lot. Because currently you're pushing 15 damage. If nothing changes. Yeah, and like Abyssal Eye is a nothing play. It probably doesn't even block. It has to turn into a 6/6 when we go deep first and draw us a card and help us get to the deep, so yeah, there's no reason to... Oh, okay. I don't know why we did that, but... Oh, okay, so we played around Jettison. That makes sense. I didn't realize we were that close to deep. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just a heads up play to make sure that one of his units doesn't get traded off here. Also, because I think everything else in the deck that is brittle stealable has already been thrown away with the Reckoning. Yeah, now, there's no choice but to take the 6, but you do get to Assessor and then Assessor again if your opponent doesn't fire off Ruination. And if your opponent does fire off Ruination, then you just get to play Ash and win the game next turn, right? Yeah, it's just too... the tempo just isn't lining up for Sea Monsters in this matchup. And, like, I cannot stress enough how insane the Reckoning value was for Winding God. Especially in a matchup where, like, it typically doesn't get value. Yeah, like, you have to Ruination here, and then your opponent just gets to play a 6-attack Ash and potentially kill you next turn. We might even see him go for... Yeah, Winding God's going to continue to not go for open attacks versus this deck. And I think getting down double Assessor is pretty good. Because really the only thing that like stops you here is... Okay, Ash is at 3 out of 5, so Iceveil Archer is actually going to level the Ash even. And this means we probably also see the Everest and Trapper come down. And this is just like, I don't want to lose to the single Vengeance. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're good to just attack out here. There's no real reason not to play the Trapper. Although with 3 mana on your opponent's side, there's nothing that they can have, so... Yeah, Winding God gonna pick that one up 2-1, advance to the finals. Yeah, Jettison doesn't do anything here because we're already deep. You can't add attack back on the unit this time. The trick only works once.